What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, part of the All-City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler, live and in location in Los Angeles, where he's ready to call the Sixers-Lakers game. On paper, a great game, Legs.
Yeah, on paper and in the training room, what a great game this would be. Unfortunately, you're not going to see Embiid, not going to Maxey. When the other night when he grabbed the back of his hamstring, I was watching that game knowing I had his next game. That gave me sort of a sick feeling in my stomach. Listen, but they still have Paul George, and the Lakers are struggling. So who knows exactly what we're about to see. But, yeah, you're right. It takes a little of the luster off regardless. Super excited to be out here and going to call that game at Staples Center.
And honestly, both teams need that game in different ways. The Sixers need any game they can get, and the Lakers right now are reeling. So it actually might have higher stakes and be a better game than I'm kind of giving it credit for. We're actually going to talk about that game later on in the show, albeit briefly, as we look ahead to the weekend slate. We're also going to buy and sell a couple teams that have surprised us out of the gate in both directions. And we're going to talk rookies. Legs put together a list of 4 rookies that have kind of caught his attention that he wanted to talk about today. So we'll get to that. But we're going to start with Victor Wembanyama. Last night, they get the win, the San Antonio Spurs do, over the Portland Trail Blazers, kind of a battle of basement dwellers. But he's off to an interesting start this season. Fewer points per game, fewer rebounds per game than last season, less efficient, more three-pointers. Kind of a weird one. And we're early on that a lot of these numbers might normalize over time. You don't want to, the numbers aren't that much of an outlier from last season that you think, okay, maybe things are drastically different. Might just be early season. But when I watch him, Legs, I feel like he's getting more and more perimeter oriented. And I'm starting to question what exactly it is he's going to become as an offensive player. Do you feel the same thing? Do you question when you watch him, just what exactly is he developing into?
I definitely do. And I had my first chance to see him in person last week against Oklahoma City, and I was really excited for that reason. And he had probably his worst game of the year. Worst game he probably had, certainly of this season, and then maybe even over the last 2 months of last season. He just wasn't involved, did not take a field goal attempt in the second half of that game. He looked bothered by Oklahoma City's speed. He looked bothered by the smaller defenders that were guarding him. He looked bothered by And I have noticed this about him, and I actually asked Greg Popovich about this before that game. I have noticed on film, he is really getting physical treatment defensively by smaller players out on the perimeter. And I think the league in general, I've seen more physicality, like on what they're letting go and how handsy guys are being on the perimeter. I feel like the tone here in the first couple of weeks is they're letting guys play a little bit more on the perimeter defensively. And that's affected him dramatically because I don't think he's catching the ball in great spots on the floor, and he's working so hard from out there. I mean, you're already playing against guys that are smaller. They're down there, they're ready, and Oklahoma City has a stable of guys they put on him that night that fit this profile. You know, that 6'6", 6'7" range with a lot of strength, great lateral quickness. That's exactly the type of defender right now that's bothering Victor Wembanyama. And so he got really relegated to be a perimeter player in that game. And for the most part this season. So I do think right now I am kind of questioning. There's no question what the guy's talent is. And we know he's going to be an incredible player. He'll be one of the faces of the league one day. But I do think based on the start of this season, you kind of do say, okay, let's just wait a second here and see what they figure out he is offensively and how do they maximize better ways to get him the ball where he can just operate without going through what he is to work so hard. And he's taken too many threes. There's no doubt in my mind he's taken too many 3-point shots because I think, Adam, right now, that's a shot he can get off whenever he wants with his length and his release. Even when he's being guarded by the type of guys I'm saying, he can still shoot that shot. And I think that's kind of where he's at right now mentally. I can kind of settle for that. It's bailing out the defense. I don't think it's all his fault. I don't think their offense has been run in a way that helps him and benefits him and puts him on the move first to get guys off of him so he can catch it moving first. Putting the ball in his hands and operating from a face-up dribble position 30 feet from the basket is a tough spot for him right now, and he's not really strong enough to hold his position in the post. So that's why I think the movement in the middle area of the floor is where he could thrive the most. That's the most untapped potential for Victor Wembanyama, because there's no way to other way to say it. He's had a slow start to the season offensively relative to the way he ended the season a year ago.
He's taken 7 threes a game, and he's taken 8 twos a game. So almost the exact same numbers, almost split 50-50. I think it's something like 55% of his shots are twos. And that part to me is, again, what is it you're trying to be? Because he can be a great three-point shooter, but that's almost a shot that, this is how Jokic approaches his three. It's the last box on the list, right? The checklist of what do I get this possession? And the last one is, okay, the three-pointer. His just seems so much more skewed in that direction. And I thought that was early, rookie year, but over time he's going to develop some sort of like feel around the basket or feel with his back to the basket, and it hasn't quite come yet. But I think you hinted at something earlier, which is I think young players need an action or two that becomes their basis. And that could be seals. I mean, he's so long, guys are going to try to push him out. Does he learn how to use his body so that he's constantly forcing you to shade to his right? Okay, then I spin to my left and put that arm. I mean, he's got that huge wingspan. Like, it's almost impossible to play him properly. So can he learn how to just shade the body? Oh, you're going to this way. Now the target's way up here. And there's just no way to cover his wingspan without fully putting yourself out of position. But he doesn't seem to be doing those types of things. Is it pick? We talked about flat screening the other day. Chet Holmgren's so good at a flat screen, and then you release quickly, and now you're attacking on the move. He doesn't seem to have anything. And again, I agree with you. This is a Spurs problem as much as a Wemby's problem. But I would love to know that there's one or two things that when he gets to it, it's like, that's so hard to guard when he releases like that or spins like that. And I just don't think he has any of those.
I agree with you. And I will say this, if I went back with you and we watched the last 25 games of last season, he came on in those areas. Yeah. In fact, I was blown away a little bit toward the end of the year how different he looked from October, November last year, his rookie year. When he was running up the floor beginning of the season as rookie year, he would run up the floor. Even if he was slightly ahead of the ball, you're thinking, okay, he's got a smaller guy running with him. This would be a great opportunity to run that guy into anywhere, even if you get anywhere below the foul line. If you're not strong enough to run that guy and seal him under the rim, even if a guy like Wembanyama, you seal him somewhere at like the dotted line in the lane and stop and put your hand up, and the ball's thrown ahead to you and you get an early seal, you could turn and score. He did none of that at the beginning of the year. Everything he did, as soon as he felt contact, he'd veer out to the wing. He'd veer out to the corner. And he'd spend most of his possession as a perimeter player. That wasn't the case toward the last 20, 25 games. He was running up the floor, putting guys on his back, demanding the ball. They were throwing it ahead to him. He got to a place where he was comfortable catching. He has a very hard time if he goes down to the block, staying on the block. He's going to end up out at 12 to 15 feet because he's just not strong enough to hold his position. And guys are getting into his back. But what he was doing at the end of the year, okay, that's fine. You pushed me out. I caught the ball at 12 to 15 feet. He was putting it down one or two times, and then he was shooting turnaround jumpers over those guys quickly before the double team came, before guys started getting into a wrestling match with him. He hasn't done a lot of that at the start of the year. The one area he's had success this season, and I was disappointed the night I called the game, they didn't run this action at all for some reason, that elbow post up, top of the key post up area where they would give him the ball and kind of get flat around him. He's had success in that set early here in this season, and they just don't run it consistently enough. He likes operating from there where he can catch it and he can either just rise up and shoot over somebody because he's in a good shooting range. It's not a 26-footer. It's a 15-footer. Or he can put the ball down once and be at the rim and practically dunk it or lay it in from those areas of the floor. He just doesn't get it there enough. What I'm noticing this year, Adam, also, when he does post, smaller guys, that's pretty much everybody in the league. But I'm talking about if he's being guarded by wings, not power forwards or centers, when they're pulling the chair out from under him because he's not strong enough to start to back into you, have the chair pulled out and still have a strong enough base to maintain his balance enough that he can still catch the ball. I mean, he's losing his balance to where now the guard that's trying to enter the ball, they look in a different direction because he doesn't look ready to catch it. The game I called, Oklahoma City, multiple times, he fell to the ground when guys did that to him. So there's a lot, obviously, of a learning curve here for him. A lot of it is physical strength. A lot of it is just him understanding ways that he can attack certain defenders in the way that they're playing him. It's going to come. I am confident it'll come, but I do think his best area ultimately is going to be mid-range area of the floor. I think once he figures out how to catch it, go quickly, get to a spot, rise up, shoot the ball on balance, accept the contact, and still be able to finish a shot, it's almost going to turn into an unguardable shot, similar to what Kevin Durant does to people in the middle area of the floor. He just doesn't have that right now in his arsenal. It's a lot of threes, it's slashes, and it's stuff like around the rim that they throw to him. He doesn't really do what I'm talking about, and I do think ultimately that's going to be his most unstoppable offensive go-to weapon.
What do you think is the counter punch to that? Because if that's your punch, you're trying to catch around there. Is it elbow offense that he becomes? I mean, he's got some good passing chops to him. So is the counter, okay, now everybody's diving and cutting off of him, and that's the hub of the offense is that elbow, and his guys are cutting, you give a little space, he hits the jumper, you stay too close, he's got the pass over the top. So do you see him as more of a fulcrum? And because that's one area of his game that I think can take off. He's a little bit of a finesse scorer right now, but maybe he could actually be better of a setup guy just based on the fact that he's over everybody. He can see over everybody.
Yeah, and look, he's still learning where everybody is, and I think this was what I was hoping Chris Paul would be the biggest benefit to him, and helping him understand in the film room, on the court. And the night I was there, Chris Paul was doing a lot of coaching with Victor Wembanyama, dead ball situations and timeouts and free throws. Chris Paul probably talked to Wemby that night more than anybody, even more than Popovich. Chris Paul was in his ear constantly, and I think he's got to learn where the defenders are coming from, see it, feel it a little bit better so he can pick you apart. But right now, like, he's not getting that kind of traffic and activity to even make those plays. He has more opportunities to just attack. But what I would like to see, Adam, is more opportunities where, like, they don't run dribble handoff where he is the recipient of the handoff. Like, take a look at the Phoenix Suns and look how many times in the court. And I'm going to use Kevin Durant as an example a lot because, listen, man, Kevin Durant's 7 feet tall, super slim, doesn't hold his position great either. And I'm not saying he's going to be Kevin Durant.
Right.
But I do think there's things to take from his game with his shooting stroke that Wembanyama has, his length, right, and his ability to get to spots. They don't run that kind of stuff for him. Kevin Durant gets a bunch of dribble handoffs from guys, whether it's a big guy. Guards run it. Like, I've seen, Tyus Jones will come up and run dribble handoff with Kevin Durant coming off of his hip because then Durant's catching it on the move. And if there's any mistake made in the communication on the switch or whatever it's going to be, Durant's got like a step on a guy where now that defender's retreating and then Durant stops on a dime. That guy keeps going, and now you rise up and shoot an open shot. Like, Wemby doesn't do those kinds of things. I don't know if he doesn't feel it. They don't trust him to catch that handoff without losing the ball. The defender's going to fight over it, and now it's going to be a turnover because he's not strong enough to come off hip to hip. I don't know. But more movement before he catches the ball with purpose is what Victor Wembanyama needs. And he's probably always going to need that to max out who he is as a player. And I don't see a lot of that right now on the part of their offense.
And the other, I like the idea of movement. So you have the dribble handoff that you're talking about. Another thing that guys do, and especially bigs, the flare screen at the top of the key, slip to the basket, right? I'm going to set a screen, then I slip and I catch it on the move. My defender is thinking the flare screen's coming, so the defender steps up a little higher. You slip to the basket, you gain a step. There are players that do that, especially bigs, that do that 5, 6, 7 times a game, and it generates 2, 3 shots a game just off of that one action. So you're right. There's little things. But when I say having a thing that he goes to, that's what I mean, though. You would like to start to see it. Oh, there it is. Here he goes for the slip screen. He's so good at that. It's such a tough thing to guard. And I think he needs to start developing something consistent there. I will say that this whole conversation is about his offensive game, and really it's not even about his offensive limitations as more as it's you want to see a player starting to develop an identity in year 2, and that's what we're talking about is that, I mean, it's only been 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but we're not quite seeing that. Defensively, though, there's just no question. The guy is such a monster. He's better than last year, even statistically, more steals and more blocks. And that's why whenever we talk about him, his floor is still superstar to me, because the worst thing that could happen to him is he's the best defensive player in the league and he's underwhelming offensively. But he still has that floor defensively where just being on the court makes you the best defense.
Yeah, listen, his impact defensively is going to outpace his offense for a while.
Maybe
that's
forever.
probably going to be for a couple more years, I think. What I noticed even in the game that I was calling, so I'm sitting there, I had a great vantage point to see what it looks like visually to opposing teams when he's on the court and in the lane, as opposed to when he was on the bench. And it's dramatic. Like, it's like, wow, like I can see space now as a guard. Like, I'm looking through the lane. Like, there's daylight in there when Wembanyama's on the court and he's back there roaming around. I can't even begin to describe what that looks like. It's even more impressive and imposing just visually than like a Giannis is, who's got this incredible length, and Giannis plays with much more force and quickness and strength. So the impact, but just what it looks like for passing lanes and driving lanes, and you're thinking about your ability to get to the rim when he's anywhere near the lane, you really start to question it. And so his impact, even on non-tangible statistical plays, is there, because he's dramatically affecting the way you're thinking and processing what potentially could be there around the basket. So his impact defensively is special. And now we wait and see, when does the offense catch up? I mean, I'm looking at some of his numbers. Adam, he doesn't get to the line anywhere near enough.
Yeah, 3.8
and the part of that's physical strength. I get it, but I just think right now he's succumbing a little bit to the physicality against him. And Pop told me he's intentionally telling him not to react to the officials because he doesn't want him to feel like a victim. He said he wants him to get tougher and play through it and understand this is how you're going to get treated. You've got to get better and accept it. But that's obviously a big additional component to him as a player, is having more nights where you're shooting 8-10 free throws and less nights where you're shooting 2, because that's kind of been the MO here in the last several games. He doesn't really get to the line at all, and he's not shooting the ball well from deep. So his numbers haven't been as good as they were a year ago. There's no doubt he's going to hit his stride, and he's going to go on a run here offensively. I'm convinced of it, but we need to be patient with him because he's got a lot of things still he's working on and figuring out, and his teammates are a big part of that, and the talent around him is a big part of that.
Well, Devin Vassell returns this weekend, we're told, so that'll be a nice injection of talent, and hopefully you see that help him out. But I think more than anything, it's the stuff we're talking about, a little more mentality and developing some traits that he can kind of hang his hat on and say, this is the identity going forward. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we're going to get into some rookies that Legs has identified that have really stuck out to him. Kind of runs the whole list. Some guys are big names, some guys a little bit off the radar. So we're going to talk about them on the other side. But first, they say first impressions are important. What about lasting impressions? That's where Blue Chew comes in. Blue Chew helps you boost your confidence in the bedroom so you can stay hard and perform at your very best. Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part, it's all done online. That means there's no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever the opportunity arises. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code ALLCITY, all one word, ALLCITY at checkout. You just pay the $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code ALLCITY to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. Also, want to tell you guys about HelloFresh. This thing's unbelievable. You go on the menu, or you go online and you see the menu they have, and they update this menu all the time. You pick from, if you have a meal plan of 2 meals a week or 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever it is you sign up for, you go on and you see an entire menu prepared by chefs of exactly what's available to you that week. So you can say, you know what, I'm in the mood for some tacos. I'm in the mood for a chili over here. I'm going to order those two. They arrive right to your doorstep in a nice little refrigerated packaging. All the ingredients are extremely easy to sort out, know exactly how to prepare the meal. The instructions have photos on them. It's really, really nice and helpful. So you can prepare these little 20 to 30-minute meals, and they are absolutely fantastic. I showed you guys my jambalaya I made the other day. I made some nice cutlets the other day. It's nice that we get to experiment with this and try it out for ourselves because it's been incredible. It makes a nice little Sunday date night for me and my wife, cooking at home, these new recipes we've never tried before. I highly recommend it. And with the end of the year, you're probably starting to plan on your budget for 2025, maybe try to make some dietary goals. Well, you can make that easier on you with HelloFresh. Right now, you can get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free NBA. Applied across 7 boxes, new subscribers only. It varies by plan, but that's 10 free. 10 is a lot. 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/free NBA. All righty, back here, segment 2 of the All NBA show. I'm with Tim Legler. You identified a couple rookies you wanted to talk about. I'll let you take it away here. Who's the first rookie?
I'm going to go with Zach Edey. First of all, just, coming out of the gate and earning a starting spot on that team and fitting in with the way that they want to play. Memphis was a really interesting team to us coming in because of the year they had last year. You don't even know what they are. And we knew they were wild card because of the talent coming back to that team. And you're like, okay, how's Zach Edey going to fit? I was concerned when they drafted him that he was going to have a hard time playing to the pace that they're best at. Yeah. Because a guy takes a while to change ends of the floor. And if he's protecting your rim and he's, you're doing your best that you can to make sure he's guarding guys that are at the rim and baseline and he's not out on the floor, defending a bunch of pick and rolls because that's going to be hard for him. If he's starting from that spot and that ball comes off the rim or it's a turnover, I was just like, well, how's he going to play with that kind of pace? Because he lumbers up and down the court. Number one, he leaned up a little bit. He's faster up the floor than I thought he would be. And the bottom line is, Adam, if that guy catches the ball anywhere near the basket and he's got one guy on him and he's not in like a traffic where he kind of can get his feet tangled up sometimes, if he's got one guy anywhere around him, he catches the basketball, he's putting it in. He's going to finish that. And so I've been impressed, man. He's only playing 19 minutes a game, but his production in those 19 minutes, he's like 11 points, 6, 7 boards, almost a block, and most importantly, 64% converting. Everything he gets his hands on in the lane's going in the basket. He has impressed me because he looks more ready athletically for Memphis and for the league in general.
Well, he's a competitor, and I think that helps, right? Like a lot of time, big guys, you don't know what you're getting personality-wise from him, competitive-wise from him. But he's a guy that clearly seems to like to compete and takes it seriously. And so you see full effort out of him because I don't know if he's necessarily faster, but he gives full effort at all times, changing ends of the floor. I do think he's looked a little rough in some of the games up top on the perimeter, high screen and roll. When you can get a downhill guy, you can see how that's going to be a real tough obstacle for him no matter how much he develops. But your point about the size, he almost reminds me in some ways of Steven Adams in that when he can roll, and if you can get pressure on the rim so where the big has to back up, he gets to plant himself as close to the basket as he can. And once he's planted there, he's not moving. He's just an oak tree. And I think that's why when we talked at the end of the year, I know we were kind of joking about it, about the two-man game or whatever, like how much are you going to really see a two-man game? The reason I thought it would be interesting just as like a curveball for them is Ja forces your big to drop because he's so quick that you're constantly on your heels trying to make sure he doesn't get around you. And when you drop like that and you have this oak tree just rolling to the rim and planting himself 5 feet from the basket, there's nothing you can do about it. And I think so far that's bared out, not necessarily with Ja, but just with his ability to plant himself in the lane on rolls, and then he's there for good.
Totally agree. I think he's been a nice pickup. Ja's getting chemistry with him. The thing I do like about Edey, I did from going back to probably his sophomore year in college. You started when he first we started noticing him because of his just size, and I'd be watching college basketball highlights, and I'm like, my goodness, just so much bigger than everybody else. He is tough. Like he's got an edge to him. He's got I call it like a nastiness. He likes to mix it up, and he's got a very serious look on his face all the time, and like he doesn't shy away from the physicality of the NBA and the guys that are trying to get into him. He doesn't mind that, and he can handle it and play through it. who knows what his ceiling is? We're 9 games in, but that's a team that will be a factor in the Western Conference, and he has grabbed the starting spot at center. It's very impressive for me as a rookie.
The other guy I like on their team, by the way, just want to give him a quick shout out, is Jalen Wells, the other rookie.
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
like his game, man. He's smooth, has a smooth jump shot. And I think I liked him coming into the draft, and he's kind of been what I thought he would be, just a player that knows how to get shots within a flow of an offense, and he's really smooth with it. So I like him as well. You got Bub Carrington next on your list.
I do, and he's another guy I really liked coming out. I mean, could flat out score. He's just a talented combo type guard, and he has started 5 games so far for the Wizards. And I know the Wizards, are not a great team, and he's going to get a lot of more opportunity there than he would a lot of places. But it doesn't matter. He's ready, and he actually had a game the other night where 16, 8, and 7. Those are big time numbers for like a 6'4" guard in this league. I don't care what state of your rookie year you're in. That's impressive. He's got a ton of confidence. He is shooting really well in that middle area of the floor. And, overall, his field goal percentage, guys that size that are rookies, guards that are scorers, you're thinking they're going to probably shoot 38 to 42% at best. And that's not a bad year for guys like that. It really isn't. While they're adapting to the speed, the length, the physicality of the NBA, you're adapting to that, man. And, you're rushing things a little bit. So his percentages, I think, will get better, but it's already been okay. It's like just under 44%. That's pretty good for a guy that's a natural scorer that's getting his feet wet in the NBA. So I just think Bub Carrington has caught my eye.
And his shot profile is nice. It's not taking like a bunch of, the inefficient in-between stuff. Like, he seems to get to the rim decently. He takes a decent amount of threes. He's doing those types of things. Is there a player comp when you watch him that you go, he kind of reminds me of this?
Man, I think, a Bradley Bealish type player a little bit. That's obviously high praise. And,
Sure.
people lose their minds when you use a name like that. But, I mean, you have to say a ceiling guy. Like, that's what you're talking about. If I just say some guy that's an 8th man of somebody's rotation, that's not exactly, going to inspire anybody. So and the reason I say that, because he's got some of that start, stop quickly off the dribble in the middle area of the floor. When Bradley Beal at his best, and go back to the days when he was in Washington and he was putting up those huge numbers, averaging 30, that was such a huge part of his game, his ability to kind of play with the ball, toy with it, go, and then stop so quickly while the defender was still retreating. I think he's got some of that in his game, and he's got a similar physical profile.
Yeah. The next guy you have on here is a guy I really like, which is Yves Missi, I should say, Yves Missi, out of New Orleans. They need a center. He's another guy that started a couple games already out of the gate, and honestly, he might end up starting there over time just as their best option. Can block some shots, gives an enormous amount of effort. What is it you like about this guy?
I think the last part you just said. So I've been watching some film on New Orleans, and sometimes it's been because I had to do film on their opponent, and because I'm not calling a Pelicans game anytime soon. But so I'm watching them too. The thing that jumped out immediately was, when you watch film, nobody's moving as fast as he is. His effort level is off the charts, man. He is a guy that energizes their entire team with that. On the glass, protecting the rim. He's got that rare ability for a guy his size. He can be a legitimate rim protecting center that can also track guards to the rim. On a ball screen, if he jumps out and they turn the corner on him, he can take 2-3 strides, take off, and get there full extension and bother guys that look like they've got layups coming. There's not a lot of centers in this league that have the ability to do that defensively. And so for me, that's what has stood out to me. It's just a different level of energy and force that he's playing with so consistently relative to like other bigs that are on the court with him. He's been and I liked him in college, but I think he's even had a bigger impact here early than I thought he would. I didn't know ultimately what he was going to be in the NBA. I think you're right. This might end up being their starting 5. And he's a guy that I think that guys love playing with, and you don't have to run much for. He'll convert at a high rate, but the energy level he's giving you defensively on the glass and protecting the rim, man, that goes a long way with building up cachet with your teammates.
If you like, the Pelicans are in a tough spot because their star players are your big question mark. You just wonder, like, what are you building around those guys? But you talk about a Herb Jones, Missi, even Trey Murphy, who I really like, but has a lot of length. Like they have players that you could throw out a really rangy, long like lineup. It's just that the star players you would put around them. I mean, Brandon Ingram in theory should be that guy, another long, lanky body that you throw out there. They should have a long boys lineup, like a bunch of long guys that they can, that just take up a lot of space and
Hey,
can really
listen, man,
disrupt you.
it's like when you come up with little nicknames for groups of players, like in sports, it's the best, man. The long boy lineup. That's great.
There you go. The last guy we have here, Stephen Castle. What do you see with him?
Really impressed with him when I saw him in person, and he's got a tremendous level of poise and maturity about his game. And he's also a guy that's strong physically. He likes to defend. He's going to get better and better as time goes on at being a playmaker and understanding reading the floor. It's going to come with time. Again, it's a massive adjustment when you get to the NBA level. The windows are so much tighter. The spaces get gobbled up so much faster at the NBA level. It's going to come. Greg Popovich raved about him before the game when I had a chance to interview him about him. And he started the other night. And I think going forward, you're just going to see more and more games where you can't take Stephon Castle off the court, whether they use him as starter or off the bench, whatever it ends up being. You're going to see him, I think, finish games a lot for them because of his ability to guard guys on the perimeter without fouling. And he's also strong with the basketball and makes really good decisions. I'm just impressed with like what his ultimate curve is going to be as a player. And it's going to happen quickly, I think, on that team. More and more opportunities because Pop clearly really is fond of him and loves his demeanor.
Yeah. Can he shoot? What's his reputation? Because he's not shooting the ball very well, both from three and from the mid range. Is he a non-shooter or is he just a struggling rookie?
He's in between those two things. I'm not going to label him a non-shooter like, it's just not going to happen for him. Because if that's the case, what ultimately even would he be as an NBA player? I had a chance to sit there and watch him and watch his stroke and watch his release and his mechanics and the work they were putting in with him before the game. I think he's a worker. I think he's going to continue to tweak that, to figure out how to have a quicker release, to hone his mechanics a little bit. The shooting's going to improve. He's definitely not a shooter. This is the weakness of his game. And when that does come along, when you add that with his physical size and his defensive ability, and now he starts to make shots more comfortably at the NBA level, you got yourself a really good player. And I think that's what they're hoping, because there's no doubt coming out, there were a number of guards they could have taken, and certainly much better shooters, scorers. They looked at the other stuff that he does that helps you win and thought we can get him there with his shot, and I tend to agree with that.
Well, let us know in the comment section, both the live comments and down below, which rookies have really caught your attention, which ones you enjoy watching. As I said, Jalen Wells is a guy I would throw on that list. I think Ryan Dunn's somebody that's caught everybody's attention, so I bet he would make a lot of people's list. But let us know. Maybe there's a diamond in the rough that you've been watching that you've been excited about, and we'll read those over the weekend. All right, let's now get into our final segment here, which is let's buy and sell some teams out the gate. And I want you to get as bold as you possibly can here, because you can buy, I'm buying the Thunder. I'm buying the Celtics. Okay. All right. That would go out on a limb there. But is there a team that has surprised you so far this year, Legs, that you're buying?
This was an interesting one for me. This is a hard one for me, because the team I'm going to say, I was saying very positive things about coming out of camp. It's the Golden State Warriors. And I said, you know what? I'm excited for them because something feels really fresh about them. They seem like they're really jiving. Everybody was so positive in their experience of training camp and preseason. And so I'm like, they got a little something here. They added some pieces that I thought fit well in their system. But, I mean, you can't say that you were expecting this out of the gate. 7-1, and then the win, obviously the signature win against Boston on the road. Yeah, I mean, and in a game that was really defined by the defense both teams played in the first half. Like, you saw a Golden State Warriors team go toe-to-toe in terms of defensive presence, quickness, attention to detail, fight. That was every bit as good as Boston's. And so you're like, wow. And now Golden State's metrics, you look at them, the years they were winning at a high level, they were always good on
Yeah.
both ends of the floor. Like they never were a team that like had to get 125, 130 to beat you and they won a championship. Go back and look at that. The metrics were always good defensively. They're back there again. They're doing it every night. And that win was very impressive, man. Their ability to execute down the stretch. They're playing with so much confidence right now that so even though I was high on them, I didn't see like them being this good. I think this is going to be one of the best stories in the league all year. I think the Golden State Warriors, you're not going to win at a 7 out of 8 clip. Nobody is. They're gonna hit some rough patches, and they don't have necessarily, even though Kerr's playing 12 guys, I don't know that they've got the depth to their top guys that they could afford to go long stretches with to be able to endure that. But I think that they're a team that's in it, man. They're going to be relevant all season long, and it's fun. It's good for us because that's just good for the league. If the Warriors and Steph Curry are good and there's more reason to watch and you just don't kind of know they're going to be a play-in team and maybe get bounced in a play-in or a first-round exit, this is a team that's fun, tough to guard, and more importantly, they have really picked it up on the other end of the floor. They're back to playing really good, elite-level, quick defense.
Draymond looks happy. And I think he looks happy because he has a bunch of guys with him that are giving full effort. Like, I think that you want to make your best players happy, and he's a guy that's happy when he has other dogs on the team that are going to execute smart defensive rotations, and that's what they do. And one thing in that Celtics game, Legs, that I thought really stood out, the Celtics run all that guard-to-guard action, and it's hard because you have to put 2 on ball for just a second and then switch and release before they can make those swing passes. It takes an enormous amount of effort, communication, and timing to execute that over and over and over again. And that's what the Celtics make you do over and over and over again. Exchange, recover, all that. They executed it unbelievably well. Not just good, unbelievably well, to the point where the Celtics, for the first time this year, their offense got shut down and stuck in the mud for the second and third period of that game. So I look at that and I go, I'm with you. We all think Steph, Buddy Hield's on fire, and those things are all true. Their offense has been unbelievable. But I'm buying them because they seem to have guys who defensively are up for the challenge of being smart decision makers, quick, communicate, and just give full effort. And they have that in spades. And when you watch them play 12 guys deep, 9 of those guys are really good defensively at rotating around the perimeter, and it just works for 48 minutes.
To your point, in that Boston game, one of the things that stood out to me was, Boston, they're going to run a ton of high ball screen with Jason Tatum, right? It's a big part of your offense. And the blitzes on him on the initial screen were so aggressive in the speed and force and just tenacity with those traps. I don't know how many times in the second half of that game Jason Tatum came off that first screen, and by the time he got rid of the ball, he was out near half court.
Right.
Because he just had to keep going that direction because they were suffocating him. The rotation on the slip guy was there, so he couldn't quickly get it to the slip guy diving down the middle lane because the rotation was ready to pick up the guy. The only pass he had over and over and over was to pick it up and reverse it all the way to the other side of the court to a player that was out near half court because they ran out there to give Jason Tatum a passing lane, whether that was Derek White or that was Peyton Pritchard, whoever that was. And they did it over and over. And the Celtics really were bothered by that. So now you're like, okay, the shot clock, you've eaten up half of it, and the ball is 45 feet from the basket. And now they got to go kind of get reorganized and run their stuff. I was so impressed with their commitment to those blitzes and their execution on that for the most part without fouling and not getting burned. A lot of teams will be that aggressive, man. If you got good players, that ball's coming out of there. So you're going to get a 3-on-2 on the weak side. They weren't getting any of that because of how quickly Golden State was rotating out of those traps. So really impressed with the game plan, the commitment to it, the attention to detail, all of those things. Look, and Andrew Wiggins is playing better offensively. Buddy Hield's been incredible offensively to this point.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going right for them. Interesting part of their schedule here. So they had this stretch of games with Boston, Cleveland, OKC, Dallas.
They can make some statement. They can make a huge statement this week.
That's murderer's row, man, in the NBA right now. And they already took care of Boston on the road. Now they got Cleveland, Oklahoma City, coming up next. You're putting blemishes on teams that haven't dealt with it. If they can get if they beat Cleveland and Oklahoma City, imagine what the narrative is going to be around the Golden State Warriors. You run off that trifecta this early in the season, man. Doesn't get much more impressive than that in this league.
Well, if you go 9-1 to start the year on top of that, because if you get those 2 wins, you're 9-1 in your first 10 games with signature wins over the top teams in the NBA. That would be an unbelievable start. And look, 1 down, 2 to go. We'll see what happens. One of those games tonight, we'll talk about in a second. All right, so that's the team that impressed. I agree with you. They were on my list. I think you could throw the Cavs out there as well. We gave them a lot of love on Monday. What about the sell part of this? Who are you selling already this early in the year?
Man, I think I got to go with the Pelicans. And I'm not
Like,
sitting here saying I was expecting the Pelicans to be, top
yeah,
4 in the West. I feel like we've had that conversation too many times since
over and
Zion,
over.
Ingram, and McCollum were together, and we get sucked into that big three and those top guys. And there have been times they've put it together and they look really good and relevant. And you and I both over the last year plus have raved about their role players and the contributions to different guys and the depth of their role players and all those things. And so it all adds up to this is a team, man, you got to pay attention to. And look, I'm not saying they're going to be, sub 500 or anything all year, but I'm just watching them, man, and I don't know this is going to come together. They're 3-6, relatively healthy. Ingram's played pretty well, and they're still 3-6. And
Yeah.
there's something missing with this team. And by the way, some of these losses they have had, they haven't been competitive in these games, and they're not all to like great teams. I mean, they lost by 22 to Portland.
It's
Like
unbelievable.
that's tough early in the year. They've got a 15-point loss to the Hawks. Then they've got another 18-point loss to Portland again.
Yeah.
So these are losses that like almost inexplicable. And so for that reason, man, I'm just looking at them and I'm saying, you know what? I just don't know this is ever going to come together for them. And now I'm thinking they were firmly to me in that 6 to 8 mix going into the season. I don't know, man. Maybe it's closer to that 8 to 10 mix for New Orleans.
I agree with you. And they're the same thing. This is the year I didn't buy into them just because they have had the talent for a while, but the leadership of that team, and I mean the player leadership there. Although you can question Willie Green as well. It's always hard when a coach has constantly injured players and guys that you're not sure they buy in. But I just think that the book is out, man. That team does not buy into their leaders, and you have to make a decision now on Zion and Brandon Ingram, in my opinion. I
Hey,
know
one
that
other
sounds like a
thing,
hot take, but
and Adam, one other thing, because it's always important to put schedule into context. Okay, so they've actually had a fairly light schedule to this point.
a lot of
Look,
home games.
let me read off their next stretch of games, and they're 3-6 right now. They
Yeah.
play now at Orlando. I mean, they don't have
They win
Banchero,
that
so
one.
they're going to maybe catch a break. That's still going to be a tough game. Brooklyn at home. I mean, you have to win it. After that, at OKC, Denver, the Lakers, at Dallas, at Cleveland, Golden State, at Indiana.
Yeah. They could lose every single one of those games.
You're talking about you might see how many games is that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9 more games. They're 3-6 right now. They might have another 3-6 coming. Yeah, you go 6-12 to start the year. I got news for you, man. That's hard to recover from.
Well, speaking of which, that's why my team that I was selling was the Sixers. And I know it sounds crazy this early in the season, but what are they? 1-6 at the moment. You don't have Tyrese Maxey for a couple of weeks. Embiid comes back next week. Reportedly he'll be back. I look at that and I go, at what point is a hole too big of a hole? Now, they're lucky that they're in the Eastern Conference and that right now, if they had just 5 losses, they would be the number 5 seeded Atlanta Hawks, who are 4-5 and in that 5 spot. So maybe just because of the East, they can recover from this. But I look at it and I go, no, Maxey, they might not win until Embiid comes back. You might be 1-9 by the time he comes back. And if you're 1-9 or 2-8 or whatever, the rest of the year, you have to be elite just to get back up into that 4-5 conversation. So, that's why I wanted to ask you, we all think they're going to be good. They have a good roster when everybody plays, but how big of a hole is too big of a hole for a team right out of the gate?
Well, I'm going to go back to the very first thing you said and say how fortunate they are to be in the conference they're in. That makes a big difference because
Unreal.
right now, third place in the Eastern Conference is 500. Third place in the Western Conference is 7-1.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? And
Yep.
ultimately, I'm not even going to focus as much on record and seeding and where are they. What you ultimately are going to focus on is there's so much talent at the very top of this roster that I'm not ready to sell them yet. I totally agree with you. Nothing could possibly have gone worse for the Philadelphia
Yeah.
76ers than the start of this year has been. Between Embiid not being ready and then getting suspended and the drama around that, and now Maxey grabs his hamstring the other night. Paul George misses the beginning of the year. You're 1-6. The vibe's not good. The city's already angry because the Phillies flamed out, and the Eagles weren't playing great at the start of the year. So all the focus is on the Sixers, and this is how you start out. So there's a lot of
They're
pressure
bad.
right now, kind of building there. And I don't know how long this is going to last before they start winning games and they get everybody back. But I can't quite sell it, man, because of Embiid,
Well,
Maxey, and Paul George at the end of the day. Like I'm saying, let's say this team gets to sixth in the Eastern Conference, right? And that's where they finish. And we say this every year about them. If they're healthy, and I know it's almost beyond, like you almost like have to suspend reality to think that's going to be the case. Okay. Because it just has never been the case. So,
yeah.
but let's just say once again, if they are, I don't care where they're seated, as long as they stay out of probably Boston's bracket, they're going to have a chance, man, to make a run. But it's certainly been delayed before we can make any kind of judgment on the Philadelphia 76ers.
Of course, no judgment, but what I'm selling is their ability to climb above even a 3 seed. Like you look at it right now, Cleveland's 9-0. They're 6 games back. They might be 8 games back by the time Embiid plays his first game. Boston is 7-2. Okay, you're 4 games back, but really, we know Boston's going to win at an incredible rate. You're probably not catching either of those two teams. So 2.5 weeks into the season, and we're saying your ceiling is now a 3 seed. That's why it's tough. And then Indiana, some of these teams, New York, they haven't been as sharp. So that's why they have a chance to still climb into potentially a 3 seed. But I just think anytime you have championship aspirations and your ceiling is 3 seed, you're automatically putting yourself in a really, really tough spot. And that's
fair. Totally fair.
You could easily have done Milwaukee, by the way, who maybe has even lower vibes right now, and they haven't been as unhealthy, although they have suffered, obviously, some major injuries. All right, let's get out of here, Legs, by talking about the weekend. There's some great games tonight, by the way, on the NBA slate. We have the Heat at the Nuggets. The Nuggets, man, starting to play a little, starting to play not too bad. Russell Westbrook and Jokic have a nice little two-man game. You got the Pacers at the Hornets, which I like. You've got the Warriors at the Cavs, Bucks at Knicks, Suns at Mavericks, Rockets at Thunder, Clippers at Kings. What are you watching on a Friday night? Well, you're calling a game.
Well, first thing I'm going to do, and this is my first time doing this year, and he's new to the show. I got to call James out on the carpet. James, put that graphic together for Friday night's games.
And I did have the ESPN one.
The game that I'm calling.
This is on me, Legs. This is on me. I gave James the list, and I completely spaced it as I was putting this. You're right.
And look, I'm kind of obviously somewhat tongue in cheek. I get it, man. Sixers are missing Embiid and Maxey. They're coming here with Paul George and a cast of role players. I don't know. Now, the one thing I'm really looking forward to, man, and I'm going to be watching a lot of film this afternoon, and I'll be going over talking to the coaches. And the Lakers just went 1-4 on their road trip.
Yeah.
And had a very some choice words from their head coach after their most recent loss against Memphis, when he just was really disgusted with their effort collectively. I just watched most of the Detroit game, which was right before that, and they were down 20 to the Pistons on the road. Came back, made it a game, and then Pistons closed with a flourish, but they were just playing so much harder than the Lakers. So there's some, my point being is this: Lakers have a little bit of pressure on them right now, and this is obviously a game you cannot lose if you're the Lakers. You got the Sixers coming in without those guys. So there is some drama there, I think, and it's going to be interesting to get the vibe in the building for, like, if they get off to a slow start tonight, like what's going on with the Lakers right now. So there are some talking points. I hope we get a good game, compelling game, interesting game. I'll be on the call with Ryan Rucco at 10 o'clock Eastern. So I am literally looking forward to it. Unfortunately, we're just not going to see the Sixers at full strength.
Even with a 1-4 road trip,
there you go. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about right now. I want you to put that on a placard and wear it around your neck and all for the rest of the day. All right. Don't go by Adam's recommendation on a graphic. If I'm working a game, I don't care who's playing. That game goes on must-see TV tonight.
So even at 1-4 on their road trip, the Lakers, if you get a win tonight, you're 5-4, which means you're right. Like the West has not separated outside of those top 3 teams. So if you stay in that zone, you're fine. This, I think they get the comfortable win, but you never know. But at the same time, Philadelphia is desperate. The literal worst record in the Eastern Conference right now. We just talked about how bad the East is. They stand alone in the worst record, so you don't want to add to it. So that game does carry some intrigue. And then on Sunday, Mavs at Nuggets. I can't wait for that one. Celtics at Bucks. You hope that game is good, but it might not be. We're burying the Bucks right now. Knicks at Pacers could be really interesting. Warriors at Thunder. As we mentioned, the Warriors on the warpath, and then Kings at Suns. So those are the Sunday games. I feel like both Friday and Sunday has a lot of good games on it, man. Should be a really good weekend.
And at the Mavs Nuggets is going to be a preview on Sunday of a game I will be calling out there the next time that Dallas comes to town. So I'm very excited about that. I'll be out there with you, and we're talking about maybe trying to do a show together in person, sitting side by side, which we have not done. We probably should take advantage of the fact that I'll be out there at a Mile High in a couple of weeks. But yeah, there's some great Warriors Thunder. Again, man, I'm really curious to see how Golden State, after beating Boston, and it wasn't even like they were acting like that was any big deal to them. Like they expected to win that game. Now you go in. Yeah, you get Cleveland, OKC back to back. I'm really curious to see how they play over these next 2 games. And that one on Sunday, could be a situation where they go 3-0 against 3 teams. I don't know what their collective record was at the time they started the Boston game. Those 3 teams, you're talking about 2 teams with 3 losses total combined.
Yeah,
man, that's impressive. So let's keep an eye on what the Warriors do the next couple.
If they do that, we're definitely talking about them on Monday. Everybody, have yourselves a great weekend. Tune in tonight on ESPN. Listen to Legs breaking down the Lakers game. It should be a good one. And everybody, hit that like button for us on the way out. We'll see you on the other side. Wait.
All silly like the man.
James, you can just interrupt me on